Hello, I'm the Dark Master. Welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. This time we'll be covering episode 15, Kirby's Pet Peeve, or as it's called in the Japanese original, Birth, Kirby's Younger Brother? Before we start with the plot, let's cover how the English dub changed the episode number. As while it was released on January 12th, 2002 as the 15th episode in Japan, the English dub was released on October 19th, 2002 as the 12th episode. Once again, another victim of the differences in New Year's between North America and Japan. Let us now start with the plot. The episode opens with Tiff reading a book. In the Japanese version, the book is titled The Crest and the Mark. With all my research, I could find nothing that it was referring to, meaning it was likely simply created for the show, which makes it absolutely brain-boggling that 4Kids digitally airbrushed it out in all scenes it appears in. So odd. Was it like offensive to somebody? I couldn't really figure that out. Her reading is interrupted, though, as we turn to see Tuff and the other village kids playing with Kirby. Now, there are a lot of changes in this episode, but overall, the English dub just makes the kids more dickish. I mean, it makes sense and does justify the plot, but Tuff is just plain unlikable. We'll continue on that towards the end, but now let's continue the plot. Tiff's reading is interrupted as she hears her brother and Kirby playing Kick the Can. Literally. They're literally playing Kick the Can. I've never seen this happen before. Spikehead here is particularly rude. Some say this is out of character, and while for Honey, this argument makes sense, but the other kids have always been a little mean to Kirby. Spikehead tells Kirby to catch the can when he kicks it, which the poor pink puffball tries to do, but trips over a rock and rolls down a hill to where Tiff is. Tiff lambasts them for mistreating Kirby due to his smaller stature. Honey says it's not their fault that Kirby is clumsy, which is kinda true, but really misses the point. Tiff rebukes this statement, saying the kids should know better since Kirby is basically a toddler. The kids leave, suggesting Kirby play with the other babies. Tiff then decides it might be a good idea to find Kirby a more appropriately sized playmate. After the intro, we then cut to Gengu's toy store. He is in a bit of a kerfuffle as Sir Ibram's family appears to be coming while he's doing inventory. He's looking for the new action figures when he notices a mysterious box with a familiar silhouette on it. I wonder who could be from. There's also symbols on there in the Japanese version, but they were airbrushed out, which is kind of odd, but oh well. Opening it, he unpacks in a smaller box with the same silhouette before he can carefully investigate this mysterious arrival. He hears a knock on the door as he goes to greet Sir Ibram and his family. In the Japanese version, Sir Ibram apologizes for coming in on a holiday, but in the English dub, he implies that they simply came earlier than when Gengu normally opens his toy store. The change is not really harmful, so let's continue. The family enter toy store. Tiff says to Gengu that they're looking for a special toy, while Tuff runs off and goes to grab an action figure that is clearly based on the Deity mech from Unreality TV. Also, if you look really closely on the top right part of the shelf, there's a little figure based off General Pepper from Star Fox. Quite a subtle reference, but appreciated. In the Japanese version, he says cool when he picks up the action figure, but this was removed from the English dub. His mother, however, says they're not here to buy toys for him, rather for Kirby. Then in an act of karma, the figure breaks. Tiff's reaction changes between versions. In the Japanese original, she says that's what her brother gets for teasing Kirby. Whereas in the English dub, this is changed to her asking whether or not that's coming out of his allowance. Tuff's reaction is obviously also changed between versions. In the Japanese original, he denies teasing Kirby and says it's uncool for a Star Warrior to have a toy. In the English dub, he's even more selfish, saying he doesn't want to be there and questions the merit of wasting money on toys for Kirby when he can just get more toys for himself. One last change is Gengu's reaction. In the Japanese original, he's silent, but in the English dub, he makes frantic noises, which makes sense considering merchandise was broken. He then asks if they're looking for a toy for Kirby. Tiff explains the situation and how he has no one to play with. Aww. Gengu, seizing the opportunity, says he has just the right toy, which is the one that just got shipped in. No idea why they wouldn't look at the other toys first, but hey, I guess they don't want Tuff breaking anything else. Gengu pulls the newly arrived box out. In the Japanese original, when he brings the box out, he says it was new, so the price is higher. However, this was changed in the English dub to him saying they only have one in stock. Regardless, he opens the box and the family is amazed.
And I only have one in stock.
This is nothing but a harmless Christmas package.
We then cut to Castle Deity, where Tiff presents Kirby the present. I would like you to take note of the clearly visible enemy logo. Trust me, it'll be relevant later. She unboxes the toy and Kirby looks at it, innocently curious. Tiff then proceeds to put batteries in after explaining said act to Kirby. Since now is as good as any, let's talk about the character of the week. A character of the week, for those curious, is another word for a one-shot guest character. It's sort of like a monster of the week, but doesn't serve an antagonistic role. In this case, it is the rather simply named robot pet, called the robotic dog in Japan. Since it doesn't really have an official name, I will just be calling it Robot Dog or Robo Dog for the foreseeable future of this review. Kirby noticeably refers to it as Smile throughout the episode. It's clearly based off the old robot dog trend of the early 2000s, spurred on by the Japanese Abo line of robotic pets. The red and gold coloration is, however, specifically a reference to the super variant of Poochie, which was a cheaper alternative released by Tiger Electronics of infamy. Also, interesting side note, there is next to no official artwork of this character. The one that exists doesn't even occur in the episode, and is clearly just a cheap rehash of an earlier Fire Kirby PNG. This episode has no copyability, so why do this? Also, it goes without saying, there's no voice actor credited, and as such, I'll just say for the sake of brevity, the barking is fine in either version. There's not really a significant difference. Back to the plot. Tiff pulls on the dog's tail and it activates, scaring the group senseless with a bark. It activates and scans everyone present. In the Japanese original, there is shown English and Japanese writings on the robotic pet's screen. In the English dub, this was replaced by randomly generating numbers. As you can see, his reaction is not particularly positive. Ladylike is completely daft to this and assumes Kirby likes the pet. In the Japanese original, she says that the robot pet seems to like Kirby. In the English dub, this line was replaced with her saying, "Kirby looks delighted with his toy," despite the poor Puffball clearly running away from it. Tuff follows up the statement to his mother is also changed between the Japanese original and the English dub. In the original, he follows this up by expressing surprise that even a toy could be attached to Kirby. The English dub, he questions why Kirby was running away. His father, Sir Ibram, makes the dumb suggestion that Kirby and his robot pet are playing tag. In the Japanese version, he implies that the toy is well made. Overall, these changes give the conversation more character, as the Japanese version just lacks a little bit of spark. Tiff then advises Kirby to take care of robot pet in the Japanese original. The English dub replaces this with her saying that it might take a while for them to get used to each other. Her father then cheers to Kirby's new friend. It is here that we see the first instance of what is a consistent script change, so that I don't have to mention it every time. In the English dub, all references to the robot dog as a little brother and its birth are removed. Apparently, the reason being is that 4Kids was worried the company would be held liable for influencing younger children into believing that toys can be siblings or are born. Which is just, how condescending is this idiocy of 4Kids? What kid would think this? And if they are out there, why wouldn't their parents be able to handle it? And why would they waste money suing 4Kids over that, but not Nintendo? I mean, 4Kids is a just way smaller company than Nintendo. They wouldn't sue you, 4Kids. They'd sue Nintendo. That was the stupidest change ever. Another consistent change throughout the anime is Kirby's walking sound effect. It's most noticeable in this episode. It is squeaking in the Japanese original, but the English dub it's completely different, more of a bumble. The group talks to each other as we cut to the next day when Kirby is being followed by the robot dog. Kirby turns around to see it. In the Japanese original, the dog simply opens its mouth. In the English dub, there's a small bark at it, which is a nice improvement. Kirby keeps walking and, still hesitant to his pet, tries to ditch him, running past some flowers. He trips on a stone, and the robot dog nuzzles with him. Kirby runs up a tree to escape this. Then, the worst character of the show comes in with his vile, misaligned violin. Takori. Takori apparently was watching the whole interaction. Also, as Kirby is up the tree, when he ran up there, for some odd reason, the English dub removed the sound effect of him running up the tree. I have no idea. It's probably Takori's fault, though. Takori, the wretched bird, then lambasts Kirby for letting a piece of mechanical junk scare him. In the English version, he explains that Kirby has to learn to be authoritative, which, can I just remind you, you wretched wannabe goldfinch, that Kirby is a baby. Takori then proceeds to peck the robot dog until it tumbles down a steep slope and falls in a small pond. The English dub adds him saying "scram" as he pecks at the poor puppy. However, Takori takes it too far even in his alleged helping of Kirby, who then splashes the vile bird to stop. After being splashed, he really gets angry. Indeed, in the English dub, he's so angry that he vows to never help Kirby again. Firstly, this is not true, and secondly, Takori, calm down. As Kirby and his new robot friend rock off screen, Takori screams, "I can't believe you!" Whereas in the English dub, he is strangely more friendly, saying, "Hey, you two deserve each other." Why this change happened is unknown. Some people say this is inconsistent characterization, as it's a sudden mood swing from angry to feeling happy for Takori. Of course, I don't really care. It's just another problem in the long list of problems called the very existence of Takori, but we'll address that later in the video. Kirby and the robot dog come to a river. There is a log and Kirby uses it to cross. The robot dog, hesitant at first, tries to follow but falls in the river and cries for help. Kirby, who is slowly growing closer, decides to save his little brother. Tiff and his friends, who had been playing with rocks near the river, they hear the yelping of the robot dog, and Honey suggests that it sounds like a dog. Wow, great observation there. In the English dub, the former deduces that it was Kirby's dog, and Honey suggests it's in trouble. The dog cuddles with Kirby, giving him unconditional love as always. Tuff explains to the kids why Kirby has the dog. Spy Kid says he wishes he had one, foreshadowing. We then cut to a scene where Kirby and Robodog are in a wild pineapple grove. Some people say that because Escargoon's theme is in the background, that this must have been an error. But we are aware that a character's theme can be used outside of the character, right? How many remixes of Deity's theme are there, and how often are they used in the Kirby series? Robot Dog smiles when Kirby picks a pineapple, and using strangely sharp claws to cut the top off and a drill to liquidize the inner flesh, makes a nice drink for the pink puffball. More foreshadowing. The camera pans, and we see that Tuff and his friends are watching the pair hang out. Spikehead expresses amazement at the robot dog.
I never saw a dog do that before.
I wonder if it makes smoothies.
The kids decide to try and take Kirby's drink because they're meanies, but Robo-Dog blasts the drink out of their hand and sprays them with pineapple juice. Oh man, that's going to be so stinky and sticky. Ugh. Fruit juice is always so sticky. Annoyed at this newfound stickiness, the kids declare revenge and wander off. Kirby's a little embarrassed and turns to the Robo-Dog in anger and wanders off, as the dog still follows him, unconditionally loving him. We then cut to Kirby's house, where we see Kirby and the truly abysmal bird, Takori, sleeping in their bed, while the robot dog wanders around on the floor. After a bit, he jumps on the bed and barks, scaring both the bird and Kirby. In response, Takori, being a horrible friend, kicks the dog and Kirby out of the house, despite the fact that it's Kirby's own darn house, and he could have just himself left. What a bad, wretched, terrible bird. Despite this, Kirby takes his Robo-Dog up to the tree and tucks him in to a leafy blanket before falling asleep. As we cut to the night sky, we then cut to the next day in Cappy Town, where we see Tiff and Tuff talking about Kirby and his new pet. We then see Kirby and his robot pet walking down a street, Kirby teaching him how to cross the street safely. In the Japanese original, there are a few seconds of Tiff stifling laughter before making fun of Kirby. This was removed in the English dub, so he just outright laughs at him. After Tiff finishes his unfair mockery of Kirby, Tiff expresses a wish that the two of them could get along as well as Kirby and his robot pet do. In the English dub, she says that she is proud of him, and if Robot Dog could learn new tricks, so could Tiff. To end his rant, she stuffs a lollipop into his mouth. There's another cutscene next, one in which Kirby and the robot dog are skipping through the grass and flowers. This was removed in the English dub, but was later shown in episode 51, Kirby Takes the Cake. Kinda odd, but we'll get to that episode in a bit. Kirby and his pet run through the field, but the camera pans to see Iroh, Spikehead, and Honey hiding in the bushes. They plan on borrowing the dog, but Honey has second thoughts. Iroh convinces her to go along with it through the power of peer pressure. As the two walk past, Iroh, under Spikehead's command, grabs Robo-Dog. They poke at the dog, which causes it to be very annoyed. Kirby hears the hurt barks and rushes back, but the dog starts flashing defense, and well, just watch.
That was cool. Yeah.
That, by the way, line was added by the English dub. In the Japanese version, they're just silently stunned. We then cut to the beach at night, where we see Kirby and his robot dog eating some cooked fish. This calm tranquility piece is then interrupted by the arrival of King Deity and Escargoon while they ride their tank. The dialogue between the two has changed between versions. In the original, the latter originally says, "Diving on the beach is romantic," while the English dub, this was replaced by him being heard mid-sentence saying, "And so I say I'm not going skinny dipping." This is quite unusual, given that 4Kids is infamous for removing inappropriate stuff in their dubbing process. Yet they added this. Guess it slipped past the censors. King Deity spots Kirby and tries to run over the pink puffball, who dodged out of the way, saving his pet. Curious, he looks at the now annoyed Kirby and asks Escargoon what that toy was. In the Japanese original, the snail replies by saying it was probably the latest electronic pet. 4Kids changes this to him saying, "I don't know what he's got, but I got whiplash." While this does add a joke, it kind of messes up the line conversation. It just seems kind of odd. Deity demands to know where he can get one. Escargoon tells him that it's likely from Gengu's toy store in Cappytown. We then cut to Cappytown as Escargoon sleeps in the tank while Deity bangs on the toy store's door. In the Japanese original, he just shouts at Gengu to wake up and open the store. In the English dub, he threatens to demolish the establishment. Gengu, unaware of who's knocking, almost insults the king but is scared by him. He asks what the king wants. The king demands he be given a new electric puppy, like the one Kirby has. But Gengu explains he has no idea what
I want an electrified pup like the one you
thus
sold
cannot
Kirby.
get more of the electric puppy. So finding that Kirby has the one and only Robo-Dog, King Deity vows to steal it from him. With the English dub, he promises a dog fight, and that it will be rough. We cut back to Kirby in the tree as a robot dog's eye visor starts flashing red. Chef Kawasaki's theme plays, yet it works here. We then cut to the next day, where Tiff is talking to Honey. The girl is shocked to find out that Robo-Dog has the ability to shock people, though the young Cappy at least has the introspection to realize that she and her friends were in the wrong. Tiff accepts her apology, but says it's still odd for a toy to have such dangerous functions. Investigative as always, she goes to Gengu to find out more information, but he says that he has no idea where it came from. The Japanese original, he offers Tiff to fix the toy if it's broken. In the English dub, this was changed to him saying Deity wanted to see the box. I think this was a bad change. For one, since we saw the scene earlier, we know darn well that Deity didn't ask that. And two, if he had seen the box, considering that Deity regularly buys from Enemy, he'd know where it was from and would be able to get one himself. Tiff, however, notices the box as Gengu lifts it. She notices the label, can I just say, this is kind of odd considering I'm pretty sure she would have seen the label beforehand when her family first went to bought the robot. This is perhaps the biggest problem I have with this episode. It's just kind of an odd inconsistency there. We then cut to Kirby's house where Estrogoon and Deity are snooping around for the dog. They are spotted by Iroh and his friends, as a light version of the Enemy Sales Guy theme plays in the background. They talk to the king, who's shocked to be noticed, and lies, saying that he's merely there to borrow Kirby's toy. After the kids ask what they're up to, the kids warn them against doing so, but the king drives away, more determined than ever, and Estrogoon releases a barrage of terrible puns.
Let's go poach that pooch!
We won't stop hounding that Kirby till he hands over his toy rover. Mangy mecha mutt.
We then cut to Kirby and his robo dog sleeping in a sheep field. Estrogoon vacuums up the dog into the tank. His eyes turn an ominous red as we cut again to Tiff in the library, researching the mysterious label. It turns out to be the symbol of Nightmare Enterprises, and she realizes Kirby is in some kind of danger. In the Japanese version, she specifies it as Holy Nightmare Toys. Cursed sub-companies. We then cut to King Deity and Estrogoon in the castle's dungeon. They've put the unconscious Robo-Dog in a cage. In the Japanese original, he says the cage was designed to keep in powerful monsters. Sir Kirby couldn't possibly rescue the Robo-Dog. In the English dub, he merely says it's Kirby-proof, without real explanation of why it is. Not really a harmful change, but it is noticeable. 4Kids even went as far as to say, because it was a robot, it didn't need newspaper. Yeah, like we really needed a pee joke here. Lightning thunders in the sky as we cut to Kirby outside, wandering in search for his close friend. Tiff and her brother run to try and stop Kirby, trying to warn him about the dog's nature as an enemy product. Kirby ignores her, however, and runs off, looking for his friend. His yells fill the air and reach the ears of the Robo-Dog. This triggers in the Japanese version. He goes through his settings again and turns off his safety mode out of sheer love for Kirby. This was cut for the English dub, so he just activates. This whole taking off the safety mode will come back later, and it's rather sad. The dog bursts out of its cage, interrupting Deity's nicely cooked meal, and they go to investigate, only to find multiple Waddle Dees knocked out among loads of rubble. We cut repeatedly to Kirby running towards the castle, as we see King Deity and Estrogoon realizing the extent to which the toy is a powerful weapon. Kirby and the dog see each other and try to embrace. Yeah, not really. As Deity alongside a legion of net-armed Waddle Dees to catch the dogs arrive. The Waddle Dees surround the dog, but its eyes go red and it barks, scaring them back. The English version is strangely more crunchy, if you know what I mean. The audio is very crunchy. Even though his armies retreated, not deterred, the king hops out of his tank and, hesitantly followed by Escargoon, goes to grab the robot dog. The English dub removes them, saying, "That's right," and "Give up." I think here's one of the few times removing a line or something from the original actually improves it, because the additional dialogue was just unnecessary and it kind of just felt off. The dog kicks mud in their face, and when they recover, both it and Kirby are gone. Still not deterred, Dedede orders all the Waddle Dees to look for it. We then cut to Kirby and the Robo-Dog, tired as they walk along the rocky shoreline. The pair cuddle, but unfortunately, it's not over yet. Dedede and his army of Waddle Dees surround the pair once again. Dedede orders them to charge. In the Japanese original, Escargoon follows this up by telling them to capture the dog, whereas in the English dub, he says to get them both. Kirby soothes the scared dog, and the pair try to run away, only to be cornered at the edge of a sheer cliff. Tiff and Tuff arrive and see the pair. Happy, both Kirby and the dog run to see the pair. Tiff once again tries to warn Kirby about the dog's danger, but he remains naively resolute. Tiff, desperate, tries to separate the pair, but accidentally causing the dog to fall into the ocean. Way to go. Now Kirby is really not going to trust you, Tiff. Kirby, filled with brotherly instinct of love, and despite Tiff's cries, jumps into the water to save his friend. As they get further out, the dog starts acting strange. It scans Kirby, and in the Japanese original, the text "explosive mode" is evident. This was removed in the English dub, which is really smart because it does help to build suspense as to what happens. Kirby doesn't notice this. King Dedede, still not taking the hint, goes out on a Dedede boat as the monster teleportation theme plays in the background. Kirby reaches him, but strangely the robot dog doesn't react in his normal way. Instead, he just stands still. But then something strange happens. The dog, seemingly going beyond its programming, as it has memories of the good times it had with Kirby. It even cries because he can't stop his own death and he wants to be with Kirby. It's so sad. Dedede fast approaches, and the robot dog, in one last act of love for Kirby, pushes him aside and lets the king catch him in a move so that his brother would be a safe distance from him. Kirby tries to save its friend, but it's too late. Sadly, the only surviving part of the robot dog is his tail, and Dedede and Escargoon end up falling in the ocean for those curious. We then cut to Kirby mourning on the beach. Tiff and Tuff watch him from a respectable distance. Tuff asks if the toy was really a monster, to which Tiff answers him and the audience, in that we may never know, but that in the end it didn't really matter, because it loved Kirby like a true brother, and so sacrificed itself rather than hurt him. Gengu then appears and carries what seems to be a homemade off-brand Robo-Dog. He laments that it probably would not live up to the old friend, but Tiff then assures him that Kirby understands and that his little brother, in quotes, will always be with Kirby, no matter what. Kirby wades out into the shallows and sees a constellation that resembles the Robo-Dog. Then an apparition of the dog itself appears and says goodbye to Kirby in its own way before running off into the starry distance. Some say this was merely allegorical or in Kirby's head, but since this is an anime, the fact that it was created by Nightmare and the fact that other characters react to it, I like to imagine that it was the spirit of the dog saying farewell. The episode ends with Kirby jumping in the air, at peace, as a shooting star passes in the sky. So now, let's cover the positives, the negatives, and my final thoughts. Okay, let's get this out of the way. This is without question one of the most emotionally well-developed episodes. The ending parts of the episode are, without question, make me bawl my eyes out. And I even teared up a little bit rewatching this episode for its review while editing the video. And don't laugh. I mean, this is pretty dark for a kid's show, especially one made by freaking 4Kids. The creature cries before it dies. Like, it's just so sad, and you have to have no soul if you don't cry at that. Robo Pet, or as I prefer to call him, Robot Dog, is a very memorable character of the week. Does he get much development? No, but the interaction between him and Kirby is just adorable and proceeds at a healthy rate. It is not as rushed as I remembered it being also. In fact, I used to think that the plot was a little rushed, but it wasn't as rushed as I remember it, and it's far more developed once you actually look at it. Another positive is King Deity's role in the episode. It's really in character for him, and it's entertaining. There are some problems, however. I'll cover my personal negative, then some problems others have, and see if they really hold up. My main problem with the episode is that Tiff can clearly see the label, but doesn't question it until later on when it's convenient. Not a major issue, but I do think it's more than just a mere nitpick. But back to character, an issue some people have is that in this episode, some characters are, well, in their opinion, out of character. First, they point to Corey's sudden mood change. While I think this is likely a translation error, at the same time, this is Corey, and he's a wretched bird, a horrible character, and so it really doesn't affect me in either way. Tough is also cited, but I think it's also debatable. I mean, he's a spoiled brat in pretty much the entire anime. And while he is unlikable, particularly in this episode, trust me, there are ones he's way worse in. For the kids, Iroh, Spikehead, and Honey, they out of character argument is much stronger. To me, Honey is the only one who really feels out of character, as she's normally extremely nice. The other two are a bit of a gray area. I can definitely see the argument for Iroh and Spikehead, but it's really just subjective, in particular those cases. Plus, one could argue Honey was forced by the other older kids via peer pressure into going along, and therefore she wasn't really out of character, but that isn't really as implied as it probably should have been. Another issue is that some people criticize this episode for using like character themes as background music. And here's the thing, I think the English dub had amazing music. And Escargoon's theme, as well as the Nightmare Sales Guy theme, I think you could easily use those in different contexts and they sound great. Just because it's a character theme or just because a theme starts out as a character theme doesn't mean you can't use another context, even without the character. Kawasaki's theme was also pretty good. So, It's quite a shame that they have never really been actually in the video games and could probably be looked into being put in there. Also, one last frequent criticism levied at this episode is that the episode is very similar to the fourth episode of Jetter Mars, which is an old anime. Firstly, while yes, there's a vaguely similar plot, the ending is slightly different, and the reasons behind it are as well. Also, this anime is a lot older than a Kirby Right Back Atcha, so it's completely possible that these could be convergent and simply arrive at similar plots due to convenience. Also, not to point this out too much, but Jetter Mars is actually directly plagiarizing Astro Boy in several aspects, so maybe you shouldn't be so quick to use it as an example of Kirby stealing if itself also steals from something else. In conclusion, this episode is one of the best of the first season. I can highly recommend it. It's a true gem amongst the early episodes and of the first season, and a much watch for the series as a whole if you're trying to be selective on which ones you watch. I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective.